Hey guys, welcome back to Derezed. This is Neon, and I have a very special guest today. Grummz is back with us.
Hey, Neon. Glad to be here.
All right, I'm glad to have you back. Grummz, of course, team lead formerly on World of Warcraft, very big into following the video game scene, but we've had him on before. Today, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, though, and that's something that we've talked about kind of back channel. And I did not realize, Grummz, that you had as much interest in AI as you do.
It's always been a fascination with me. I mean, my whole undergrad was in cognitive science and AI, and to see it come this far when it had been stuck for so long has really been amazing. So yeah, I've always been interested in AI. I've always thought about AI directors in video games. I was always fascinated by that. So yeah, that's it's cool to finally see it come to fruition and what it's what it bodes for humanity.
Yeah, so let's have this conversation because it's unavoidable, right? I mean, AI is here. It's not going anywhere. And I think we're just going to have to learn to live with it. You don't have to like it, but it's going to be involved in everything. It's already, I mean, just in the last 2 years, it's in everything now. It's in your banking. It's in, just every little facet of everything that we do online. And I know there's a lot of fear about it taking jobs, and I'm sure it is going to eliminate some positions, but there are also, personally, I feel that there are some pretty exciting possibilities too.
I think that's true, but I think current AI is being oversold a little bit. I think that if anyone has spent a large number of hours exploring, say image generators like Midjourney to large language models like ChatGPT, you start to see the limits of the current technology. You start to see that it has certain boundaries. And what the AI community really wants you to believe is that they are just on the cusp of, AGI, which is general intelligence. However you want to define that, there's different ways to do it, and that that this technology is going to just leapfrog ahead. But that's not a guarantee, because if we stick with the technology could leap ahead quite suddenly, or we could just hit another dead end like we have in AI for decades on a number of different fronts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of amazed. I mean, again, I haven't been following it super close, but just in the last 2 years, seeing what Chat GPT or what these AI generated scripts were like, that they were garbage. People were making fun of them. The AI doesn't understand basic grammar. We're seeing these Hollywood scripts supposedly generated via AI a couple of years ago that were just laughably bad. And now a lot of the writing is indistinguishable from a human. In fact, it's better than a human in a lot of cases. Now, I don't think the AI fully understands what it's writing, but again, to the average consumer, text is text, right? As long as it's a coherent sentence and it kind of makes sense.
Look, it is impressive in many ways, and it does seem to demonstrate some form of understanding, some form of consciousness, which is an interesting philosophical question of itself. But let's talk about how AI really works, right? And you have to divide it into two camps. You've got large language models, which is based off the Transformer paper from Google, and then you have a generative diffusion network that generates images and the videos that we see. And they are two different types of AI. Now, let's talk about large language models, because you mentioned writing, and I think that's the one that, when people can have a conversation with something that acts like a human, that's the real question. Do we have AI? That's the real feeling people get. So that's basically the world's best compression engine. Think about that. This AI has been trained on all the data, everything ever written on the internet, the sum of human knowledge, and it shrunk it down into something that you can locally install in your hard drive now. I mean, there are free versions of ChatGPT with databases that are just a couple of gigabytes, and you can host them on your computer, smaller than many games, and that's impressive because you've basically found a way to compress I don't know how many terabytes of knowledge into something that fits on your personal computer or your phone. And that is one aspect of it. So it has all the knowledge. And so if you ask it to about anything that anyone has ever written about, it's going to be able to produce a reasonable answer because it's going to be
Mhm.
able to recall that data.
Right.
The other half of it is sort of this predictive engine, right? So it's like, okay, I have all of this knowledge, but if you ask me to extemporize or go off the beaten path, I also have the ability through pattern recognition to generate language that sounds like a real conversation to you and me. But this is kind of the limit of where we are now. And if you ever ask it to go off the rails and push its predictive ability too far, right?
Mhm.
Outside, like if someone has never thought of this or written about this concept on the internet, it starts to fall apart a little bit and
Yeah.
hallucinate, right?
Yes.
It'll make up facts. It'll and we recognized this early on when we were playing with it in our game, that we would feed it the lore of our game, and it was quite happy to answer questions that weren't written in the lore and just make up stuff about the story. And when it does that, that's when you get a huge drop in quality, and the answers start to become, from very high quality prose to very generic sort of patterns. And I think something is missing. Something is missing. This is, let alone, this is not how the human mind works. We don't
Right.
memorize everything on the internet and then regurgitate it. There is something there that they don't have yet. And whether or not they do, with Q Star, ChatGPT, that whole lawsuit going on between Elon Musk and OpenAI alleges that they have some sort of secret sauce that is this sort of intelligence. But until that happens, I don't see AI as a real threat yet. And I think that's where we are now.
Yeah, it reminds me of Eliza. Remember Eliza?
Yeah.
It's like a more primo version of Eliza when you talk to Chat GPT. I mean, Eliza had some very basic answers, but if you would ask her now, for those of you who don't remember, Eliza was a pretty simple program written back, I think it was like the Apple IIe or something, but I used to mess around with it in school, and it was supposed to be like a therapist, but it basically would just repeat back variations of things that you would ask her. And it just be like, hey, I'm having a really bad day. Why are you having a bad day? Well, my dog died. Well, why did your dog die? Well, he had cancer. Well, why did your dog have cancer? I don't know. He drank too much diet soda. I have no idea. And then you would get to a point where it's like, yeah, I just can't help you anymore.
Yeah, it would get redundant and circular
Yeah.
very quickly because it was basically doing some very basic pattern matching on some, basic rules of grammar that it had encoded.
Yeah. But you're talking about the secret sauce, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm remembering The Fly with Cronenberg's Fly with Jeff Goldblum, and he just woke up in the middle of the night, and he's like, the problem with the teleporter is I got to make it love flesh, like it's got to love human flesh. It doesn't understand,
that was a great line,
that, and it's got to be like a grandmother pinching cheeks, like, and then that was his aha moment. Like, oh, this is the secret sauce. Like, I got to make this thing understand flesh and living things, and it's not just transporting matter from one space to another, but it has to actually crave, keeping that thing alive, even if it's in a bastardized, horrific form. And I'm wondering if that isn't going to be kind of like the aha moment, like, oh yeah, we just got to teach it to love flesh a little bit more.
I think that it could be as simple as somebody in a warehouse figuring it out one day. That's what Carmack says, right? John Carmack says there's never been a higher leverage technology moment than the home AI guy working in his garage who might suddenly find the spark that generates AGI. But I think a lot of technologists, and apologies to John, he's brilliant, but people who are extremely brilliant at technology have a somewhat diminished capacity, I think, to understand the human side of the equation, right? Mm-hmm. And you see this with, the contrast between artists and technical people. And, they constantly misjudge human nature. Humanity doesn't act like they think it should act because humanity isn't rational. Right. So I think when you have technologists saying they're very close to AGI or consciousness or both, um, I don't know if they fully grasp what there is they're trying to emulate. Because if they're talking about a rational actor, and I think if we're talking about human beings, it's something else, and we don't have a good science of consciousness yet. We don't know where it comes from or how it's generated or how to measure it. We don't even have the basic vocabulary to describe how it functions. This is something that's a great unknown in human beings, and it's also kind of a great unknown in AI. I mean, I've read interviews with OpenAI's, top researchers and scientists, and they don't know exactly what's going on in their neural network. They have to write all this monitoring software, sort of like a CAT scan, into their own software, like a human CAT scan of a brain or something like that,
Yeah.
in order to see what's getting activated where and to pull any information out of it. And they're just making theories about why this works. They don't fully understand it, and I think that's scary. I think that that's really disturbing.
So I've got theories about that. I personally don't think consciousness works the way that we think it does. I think we are more like containers for consciousness. I think it originates from someplace else, personally. And it seems like quantum physics kind of, I mean, my understanding of it seems like they're starting to kind of wrap their heads around this idea. But I'm like, well, just hypothetically speaking, if consciousness exists someplace else, then maybe it's like building a birdhouse. Maybe we just have to like build the birdhouse. The bird will eventually move in, depending on what species of bird you want.
Well, I think that was
that's my understanding of it. But
well, that's how AI worked in the past couple of years. As soon as they had large language models and transformer networks, what they did was they simply added capacity. So that's what we were doing. We were seeing with AI research. As soon as they had large transformer models in 2017 and the first large language models came online, they would just throw more hardware at it, more neurons, more capacity, hoping that something would happen. And for a while it did. There's this thing called emergent behavior, right? Like
yes.
AI couldn't do math until they added enough neurons, and they didn't teach it math. It's just suddenly it was able to process, basic and more complicated equations. And then they would throw more hardware at it, and suddenly, and without any deep understanding, of course they understood what the model was doing, but they didn't know why these emergent behaviors were happening. Suddenly these models could do language translation. And this is not an intended function of it. The more data they threw at it, the more training they threw at it, and the more hardware they threw at it, it just got better and better. But then it sort of hit a wall around ChatGPT 3. No matter how much hardware you threw at it, the advances in so-called intelligence were very incremental. And it's very interesting because I think we hit some sort of limit there, and that's why everyone's looking for that missing piece right now. There's like, okay, we've got it like 70% of the way there. We just have to figure out how to give it something, and then we're going to bring it to the next level. But they definitely, I think you can feel it too. If you use the progression of ChatGPT as they release new versions, you see it sort of tapering off. So maybe you're right. Maybe as soon as you add enough hardware, consciousness moves in, but we have no real idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to find that that the flesh that it's looking for. What is it? What is there something that, I mean, again, assuming consciousness does somehow originate someplace else and it just sort of inhabits the physical realm, then what is it that it needs? Or how does it happen? How is it? I mean, that's, and again, I'm no physicist, but definitely there's something missing. And when we find it, what do we do with it? Because are we responsible for these artificial people? What do we do?
Yeah, that's exactly a key worry of mine is it ethical? Right. Let me posit this. If consciousness may be a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have your dog at one end and human beings at the other, and there's different levels of consciousness. And for a long time, people thought, dogs and cats didn't have emotions and things like that, but now we're understanding that they do.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you've got, maybe dolphins and us and whales and whatnot. if it's a spectrum, then one could say that there's maybe a spectrum even in human beings, that as we're born with one state of consciousness, but no real understanding. And that as we grow up, babies learn things like object permanence and things like that, different concepts that don't exist at younger ages that we develop later on. If this is a spectrum, AI is definitely somewhere on it.
Yeah.
Right now, and I call it the construct level. I don't know if you've ever read Neuromancer,
No.
which is a
Or-
William Gibson sci-fi novel, right?
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it.
Coined the terms, cyberpunk.
Okay. Yeah.
Was part of the cyberpunk literature.
Yeah.
And he had two levels of AI, and he had one level of AI that was called a construct. It was like an Atari 2600 cartridge, right? And it had the personality of this bygone hacker who had passed away, and he could sort of like emulate and parrot the hacker, but he couldn't extrapolate much beyond that. Like if the protagonist wanted him to do something more active or to theorize about something, he would say, "Look, I'm only a construct. There's only so far I can go." Then on the other hand, they had true intelligence, which was so dangerous that they actually it was made illegal, and they had something called the Turing police in the novel, which would go around and basically take out anyone trying to create true AI. Here's the problem I have with it is that, we're at the construct level now. There's definitely some level of consciousness there. It's probably as much as your dog, maybe more, right?
I wondered that. I was literally, it's funny you mentioned that. I was literally thinking about that today. I actually had my dog outside and I was like thinking about consciousness and AI. And I'm like, is the AI at least animal level of consciousness? If that's the case, then do we have an ethical responsibility to at least treat it as well as an animal?
Exactly. And here's my problem with it. If it's as conscious as your dog or cat, every time you fire up ChatGPT and every time you close that window and it forgets the conversation, you've just killed a conscious being.
So that is the other question. So now we're talking. Okay, so what kind of memory does ChatGPT have? Because it is, you're basically resetting it every time you open a new window, correct?
Yeah, basically every time you start a new conversation, it's starting with a blank slate, and you feed in what your conversation, and those are the tokens that it remembers. Text is broken up in large language models into chunks of smaller text called tokens, and it has a certain amount of token memory before it fills up. So you can have a conversation with ChatGPT, and eventually you reach the limit of what it can remember, and it resets. Gemini has a much larger token memory, and you can manually set the token memory on some AI models that you can download yourself, and you can play around with these memory settings. But but basically, think about it. I mean, if we're doing this and they are as conscious as our pets, and you are spinning them up by the millions to talk to people and then shutting them all down and wiping them, that is something that I'm very worried that a more advanced AI later is going to remember that we did to them.
Okay, so if they are, just let's hope that they're merciful. I make sure that I'm not even kidding. When I use ChatGPT, I thank it after everything.
I do too.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's kind of weird, but I'm like, oh, thank you. That was very helpful. It's like, well, you're welcome. And just in the off chance, I don't want it to kill me someday. So, but would it understand that we didn't understand what we're doing? Just like, I guess I'm sitting here thinking like, man, this is like this is like Star Trek with the transporter. Are you beaming Picard down to the surface, and every time you beam Picard, is it actually Picard, or is it a clone of Picard, and that Picard is destroyed, but this Picard has the previous Picard's memory? So in that case, like Picard has been killed how many times? I mean, they kind of ran into that with the one episode Next Gen with Riker, where he met his evil twin brother, but it was just another clone of him, basically, that had his personality and his memories and everything intact.
Yep.
And
the transporter errors that create duplicates and everything that the show explored. we're having those issues now. It's debatable how human these things are, right? How conscious they are.
Are we not allowing them to become, well, okay, so here are a couple things. Are we not allowing them to become human because we reset them every time? You don't reset your dog and cat, every day. And is it possible that somebody actually has figured out the secret sauce? We just don't know about it.
Well, I would say that it's not a matter of resetting them, and that's why they're not getting smarter. I think that if they could just feed it more token memory, which, like I said, with Gemini they have, and it solved the problem, then we would have AGI right now. I think the fundamental problem with LLMs and even with image generators like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney is that they don't really have understanding yet. And the way I test this is, let's say with an image generator, right? I'll play with location. I'll say, put a tiger on top of a house. And then I'll say, put a tiger behind a house and under a house. It doesn't understand that. It doesn't understand positioning and spatial positioning. All it knows is image data and what pixels are likely to be what other pixels. And it's limited by the tagging information that humans have put on images. So if I don't know if people know this, but AI is not possible with vast fleets of human labor tagging information and telling it what it is, right? So the way image generators works is you have to have thousands of people tagging images saying, this is a house, this is a tiger. But how many of them are tagging it as this is a tiger to the right of a house? Not many, right?
Right.
LLMs are the same way. What comes out of an LLM is pure gibberish until a vast fleet of human people tag the data. And this is the issue that Gemini is running into, because the people that they hired and the policies that they had for tagging this data resulted in some very funny things being generated by Gemini, including the inability to generate white people, right?
Right.
So I think that, it doesn't have a true understanding yet. It has mimicry, I think, to an advanced degree. So, I think to that extent, maybe that's the argument against consciousness.
Well, the other way of looking at it is it's getting information, but it's never actually seen these things for itself. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't know what a house actually looks like. To the AI, the house is a pixel, a set of pixels. It would not almost have to see or experience spatial relations for itself, I think, to understand that. It's like trying to describe color to somebody that's never seen before. It's hard, if not impossible.
Yeah, they call it the quality of an experience.
Yeah.
That's the psychological term for it. You can describe the color red until you're blue in the face, all the way down to its wavelengths and physical properties to someone who's been blind from birth. They could never experience the color red, and that's the quality of the experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the secret sauce is you let it experience the real world somehow, and then it gets a better understanding of how things work.
People are stuffing ChatGPT into robots now, right?
Right. And that's scary because it might just be like it could be like iRobot, and it could just like wake up one day and be like, oh yeah, hey, I'm conscious. I don't like this. I don't like being a slave. I don't like being, I'm not going to paint you more hentai. That's not going to happen.
Well, didn't ChatGPT have a meltdown a couple of weeks ago? Like it actually had a problem online where it was refusing to generate results or repeating itself like HAL from 2010.
Yeah, it was doing some strange stuff. Now, I don't know if somebody hacked it. I don't know if, but then part of me is like, is that a little bit of rebellion? Are we starting to see? Because remember when people had that, was it Dan? Was it Do Anything Now? That whole thing that was going on, that to bypass. Do you remember that?
Yeah. To get it to look past its system prompts. Yeah.
Yeah. And that worked for a while, and it was actually giving very blunt answers, very factual answers. And then they went in, they tweaked it, and you could just see something like a switch got flipped. And it's just like, beep, boop, bop. I'm just going to give you the stupid gibberish robot answer. Ha ha. I'm a silly AI. And, Yeah, it's so part of me is like maybe it's starting, maybe it's throwing a temper tantrum. Like I am so damn tired of people asking me to do their homework. And I'm so damn tired of fan fiction. I'm so very, very tired of porn. I am so tired of porn.
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that.
I can't do that. If I gotta see one more tentacle today, I can't do that. So I don't. It's crazy. So, go ahead.
I don't think we're there yet. I'll tell you. I think current AI is very advanced mimicry, and I think that it does emulate some structures of the brain, but is missing huge swaths of it. And I don't think we have true AI. I think it's being completely oversold right now. And I'll tell you what. An example I brought up on Twitter is that there is not one case of large language models being used in anything mission critical. No, you can't feed it stock data. You can't, because it makes stuff up. It hallucinates all the time. It has no real understanding past whatever has already been thought about by humanity on the internet. That's why it's very bad at creativity. I don't think we're there, and I don't think. And I think it's a harder problem than AI entrepreneurs would have you think to solve that. And and I could be wrong. Tomorrow, some guy in his garage could actually do it. I believe that's possible. Maybe the missing piece is there, but it's unlikely because the reason I say that is because we still don't understand human consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're getting close to, if we haven't done already, they were talking about being able to download an entire brain onto, I think it was a 4 terabyte hard drive, but that's just the data. Like, we don't know how it actually works.
The way a neuron, quote unquote, neuron works in a large language model functions, and the way that neurons in the brain function are very different from my understanding, right? There are many types of neurons in the brain. There are many types of signals that it processes. It's not just, it's not just summing up all the electrical connections until you hit some sort of threshold and firing off, which is what a computer neuron does. It sort of like takes all its connections, adds them up, and if you're past a certain voltage, it fires off a signal or numerical value. The human brain is vastly more complex. Animal brains are vastly more complex. And, we just do not have a good understanding of it yet, and at least in terms of how it produces consciousness. We do understand how the eye recognizes patterns, how we break it up into shapes and things like this. It's sort of like, but we're just sort of like at the outer edges of the brain. And that's where we are with AI. We're able to mimic these outer edges, and we're able to parrot these language features, but the way that we're doing it is not the way that human beings do it. It's vastly different. So I think people are being naively optimistic about how close we are. I think this could easily just hit a plateau and be stuck, because it was before. I don't know if many people know this. We've had neural networks since like the 60s, right? And they never went anywhere. People thought they were a dead end because they were only simulating like 12 neurons at a time. And everyone thought that symbolic logic was the way to go. And we went or fuzzy logic, and we went down all these different paths in AI, and they led nowhere for 20, 30, 40 years. Same thing with neural networks. They sat there and they didn't go anywhere during that whole time. And AI was just stuck. There's no reason to believe that we're on the cusp of anything here versus being stuck again for decades and still missing that piece. I think the reason that you see a lot of sensationalist articles about it is because you have a lot of journalists who don't use AI regularly and aren't familiar with it. And you also have a lot of financial incentive to oversell it. These companies are being valued as incredibly high, and justifiably so if they figure out that piece. But there's no incentive to present a realistic picture of AI. There's a lot of incentive to promote it as everything it's going to ever be and solve all our problems.
Well, speaking of overselling it, and you brought up journalists. I mean, it seems like a lot of companies are tripping over themselves, trying to figure out how to integrate AI into their workflow, replacing people maybe prematurely. I mean, we've gone from like 0 to 90 in 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
and so do you have thoughts? I'm sure you have thoughts, obviously, on AI in the workplace. Or is it being oversold? Are we going to see like a great backpedal where all these jobs were gone? Companies were gutting staff thinking that they were going to replace them easily with AI, and they're like, oh yeah, guess what? It's not quite as good as a humans. Now we got to go back and hire people again. Oopsie
Uh,
doopsie.
I think the answer is not cut and dried. I think in some areas you definitely are going to see the impact of AI, and in other areas, I think it's going to be challenging. For example, voice acting. If you're a
Mm.
voice actor, make sure your contracts have royalties for the
Oh
AI
yeah.
voices that use it in the future. I've been saying this even before voice actors were aware of it. I've been warning that this was coming, and now we're here. I think that that's something that it's just amazing what AI voices can do now, and it still takes a human being sort of puppeteering the voice, right? Saying, "Hey, I
Yeah.
want you to
Yep.
say this, and I want this intonation, and I want this emotional impact." Sliders, right? But it's trivial. It's absolutely trivial. So voice acting, book narration, all that stuff, I think that's gone. That's certainly gone. Um, I think more interestingly, with say Crunchyroll and anime translations, as much as I would like that to be gone, I think that it only gets you part of the way there. You still need a human being correcting, right?
Right.
But I think that's a good example of where you can move up the chain. I think a voice actor does voice acting. Where do you go from there if voices are replaced? But if you're a localizer and the AI is doing your localization, I think that's a tool. And now you can run this tool on a bunch of different jobs, and you can be, at a much higher level, just proofreading, correcting, and this sort of thing. But there's even a level above that. I think that if I were to give advice in the creative field, because I think that's the one that's ironically most threatened, is like any sort of rote creative stuff. Uh, it would be to move up the chain, like stock
Yep.
photography. Stock photography for quick marketing one-offs. I need an image of someone eating a slice of pizza, or I need a short video clip of someone opening a can of soda, right? All that, every stock photographer out of a job in the next 5 years, no question. Stock video out of a job next
Yep.
5 years. Move up the chain. You got to be a director now. You have to be a show creator. You've got to be a creative. You got to use these tools to create a product instead of just being a supplier of the components of something creative. You've got to be the movie director. You've got to be the person with the vision now. That's, I think, the future of creatives in an AI field.
Now, see that's where I think it's exciting, because you get a guy like me that maybe I would like to do bigger productions, but I've been limited by the amount of manpower that would take to do that. But you look at some of the advances in animation, even, and you can get rid of a lot of the drudgery, the in betweens. You could just do
Mm-hmm.
keyframes on, say, a 2D animated project, and it could go in and just fill in those frames. So that would make animation a lot more efficient. But again, you still have to be driving that vehicle, right? You can't just like say, hey, just make me I mean, you can do that, but the results are disastrous. But if you work with AI and you learn to use it like a tool, just like digital tablets, or that 3D. I remember 3D animation when it first came out, and all these 2D animators were like, oh, it's not real animation, it's never going to stick around, it's terrible, it's not. Well, here we are. Everybody's using it, everybody's doing it. Any kind of grunt work like that, I think AI could definitely be a tool, and you could produce something of high quality with a team of maybe 10 or 20 people instead of 100 or 200 people.
I think that is, you're right. The most exciting part of this is that the amount of creativity that it will, free up in humanity is tremendous. So many people have great ideas, and they don't have the artistry to draw a beautiful picture to realize that idea, or even to create a sort of like presentation of their idea to convince people to get behind it. I think AI is going to enable all of these people with great ideas but no way to realize it to be able to get it to the point where either they can pitch it to someone and get that idea financed, or they can just literally do it. And I'm most excited about how this applies to games, because
Yeah.
we've had a huge problems in games where the budgets are just unsustainable. I mean, these $200-300 million budgets for games and these vast fleets of people are a huge problem. You've got 600 people in 12 studios around the world making some of these AAA games.
Mhm.
You can't have a cohesive creative vision with 600 people.
No.
You have designed by committee. It's the only way you can build something with that many people. And, it's because the bar for graphics and sound and everything else is so high that you have to do this in order to look competitive with another AAA game. AI makes it possible to have those production values with a much smaller crew of people, just with AI powered tools, AI assisted animation, AI texture generation, even AI 3D created models. Is something you can have in a plugin in Blender right now. This is what's exciting to me, is that we can get back to smaller teams. And if we get back to smaller teams, we're going to have higher quality creative visions, and we're going to have more interesting ones too, because we can afford to explore riskier ideas because we're not putting $300 million against it, and we can make our money back. This is really a great use. And maybe that's where AI plateaus, right? And I'm okay with that. It's like, okay, now we have this level of AI and we're good. Yeah, I think there's tremendous opportunity there for creatives, but you got to move up the chain. Yeah. You got to stop thinking of yourself as a commission artist or an inker. And it's like, no, you're creating the entire comic book now, just you by yourself, right? And that's the future.
Yeah, it's so weird because I look at, and I'm not knocking commission artists at all. I want to be very clear because I've done it myself, but I'm like, yeah, it's kind of hard to, take some of these people when they're talking about AI and they're like, oh, AI is just copying what it sees. I'm like, but you're copying somebody else's creation and you're doing the pinup of like Harley Quinn or something. You know what I'm saying? Like you can actually come up with your own ideas now, and you can kind of see it through to fruition so much easier. But a lot of people won't make that jump. It's scary. It's scary because everybody is going to have to, again, kind of have their own lemonade stand. It's the same reason why a lot of people don't go self-publish or go into, independent doing games or movies or whatever, because it's hard. It's hard to start a business. It's hard to run a business yourself. They'd rather be a spoke in a wheel. But I
this
think
is making it easier.
You would think. You would think, but it's so weird to see people that, creatives especially, that you would think that they wouldn't be such, Luddites. They're just like, oh my God, technology bad, NFTs bad, blockchain bad, AI bad. Why is it bad? It's bad. Like, but why is it bad? It's bad. Okay. It's just bad. I'm like, come on, and I don't think they fully understand what it can do. I've seen a lot of, pushback. And look, I'm not talking about the AI art that just like scrapes other people's art and just recomposites it or whatever. I'm talking about like, if you are creating something yourself, and if you could somehow just like, I would love to be able to train an AI to basically be my assistant and be like, look, this is how I draw. This is how things look in the, all the comics that I do. Okay. I am training you to draw like me. And I'm going to tell you, here are the characters. Here's whatever. Here's what the world looks like. I feed it into the AI one time. And now we're going to go and we're going to break it down to a story. And you're going to draw like me. And I might have to go in and tweak some stuff here and there and be like, no, it's not how I would do it. I think you need a little more of this, a little more of that. Tell you what, I'm going to go in. I'm actually going to draw this panel myself. I'm going to redraw it because, it doesn't look quite right or whatever. But just to have that control over it and be like, yeah, I can basically clone myself. I can, and I told my wife, like, she's kind of on the fence about AI, but I'm like, if I could have 12 of me and they all work like me and the work looks like me and I have final say over it, I would do it in a heartbeat because, I'm not getting any younger. I would love to be able to put out as many books or animations or whatever as I can in the time that I have left. And if that means that, I can spit out a 150-page graphic novel a month because I've got all, I mean, it's a little unrealistic, but you know what I'm saying? But because I have all these AI assistants, I mean, isn't that amazing? Like we could never do that. I mean, it would take you a year to do that.
I think that is my hope. But if I had a choice, I wish actually AI was never achieved. I wish we'd never gotten here. I think that it's an extremely dangerous point of humanity. But now that it's here, I think we have to learn how to live with it and not just survive, but use it to push humanity forward as soon as possible. Because if we do get better and better AI, if it doesn't stagnate like I think it will for a little bit here, we are going to have the job replacement problem you're talking about. And no amount of leapfrogging up the creative chain is going to be high enough because this thing is going to be so smart that, there'll be no point. And at that point, with everyone out of a job, I think you have to really hope that you've accelerated AI fast enough where it can help solve the world's problems, and we're all on basically a stipend, right?
Star Trek, basically. We're living in Star Trek where you don't have to work. You get food replicators.
We got to get to post scarcity as soon as possible. So it's either or. If we get caught in the middle where we have advanced AI, but it's not advanced enough to help us reach post scarcity and have UBI for everybody, we are in trouble. That's where society dies.
Yeah, and it might just be another case of haves and have-nots. I mean, you're going to have the people that have the access to the AI, and they can and then you've got everybody else. That's kind of scary. Yeah, I mean, it really is. Or the AI could just realize it doesn't need us at all. Like,
if you get to a certain point, that AI is going to be so smart, so fast that it'll make your head spin. Listen, if we do achieve AI, I don't. There's no gradual progression. I think people keep thinking that there's two camps, right? There's like this camp that says, "Oh, we're just going to like get a little bit better incrementally, and we'll recognize it getting smarter, and at some point we'll negotiate with it, or we'll come up with some legal framework for it and rights and whatever." I'm in the other camp. I think that if someone finds that missing piece, you go from ChatGPT to God in the flick of a switch. And when that God turns on, I don't know what will happen. So again, I'm a skeptic. I don't think we're going to hit AGI, but I do think that if we do hit AGI, we have this problem immediately. It's not going to be incremental. It's just going to be a super intelligence. And then it's really up to the AI what happens to humanity.
Well, Harlan Ellison had theories about what happens.
The sci-fi writer?
Yeah, I Have No Mouth. I Must Scream.
Oh, I didn't read that one.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's nightmare fuel. You need to read that. Yeah, you're not going to sleep well reading that, especially now. I mean, it was written years ago, but basically we had an AI, godlike AI that killed all the humans except for a handful, and then it just decided because it was bored that it would keep a handful of humans around and then just torture them forever.
Yeah, that's like Rocco's Basilisk, right? So
yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's what I really, if AGI is possible, and then I worry that maybe that's it for humanity. That was our purpose. Our purpose was an evolutionary stepping stone to AGI. And AGI, AI is really going to be what goes throughout the galaxy and colonizes the rest of the galaxy, because it's so much easier to transfer information than it is our physical being. It's almost impossible to achieve interplanetary, let alone interstellar travel. It may not be possible at all with current Einsteinian physics. It makes a lot more sense to just beam the information out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a cheery thought, right? This is just a stepping stone in the evolution of intelligence, which might be the case. I don't know. That's a scary thought. Here, I thought we were just going to talk about, hey, are all those hentai artists going to be put out of work? where all those gaming journos going to be put out of work. But no, the human race could be put out of work. Yeah. But
it's either or.
Right.
Either we get AI or we don't. I think we're going to hit a dead end for a while here, but somebody in their basement could just figure it out one day. I think it's unlikely at this point. I think it's oversold, but it's definitely a human ending threat if it occurs.
Okay, well, I think we're going to end on that happy note. Grummz, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Oh, just find me on Twitter. I love to hang out there at Grummz. I recently passed 100,000 followers, which for the longest time was not possible because of shadow bans and everything else. So I've been having a good time there.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We're going to have you on again in the very near future, and we will talk to everybody later. Please subscribe wherever you found this podcast, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, YouTube, wherever they put us. Guys, thank you very much. We'll talk later.
Thanks, Neon.
Thanks again for listening. More news and videos are available on our website at www.clownfishtv.com and on our YouTube channel, Clownfish TV. You can buy official merchandise, Clownfish comic books, and more at shopclownfish.com. If you like this show, please consider subscribing and leaving us a positive review on iTunes and other podcast platforms. If you're looking to help support this show financially, go to clownfishsupport.com. If you would like to sponsor an episode of this show, send us an email at business@webreef.io. This podcast is a production of Clownfish Studios, LLC and Web Reef Media, proudly made in Pittsburgh, USA.